Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to actually admit, in spite of the fact that I pick on vegans a lot, that they actually do have one of their major points absolutely right, and they are absolutely 100% correct on this based on all the available scientific evidence. And that is that starch-based diets, and when I say starch-based, meaning the majority of your calories, meaning more than half of your calories coming from starches, is generally going to be much better for your overall health, and it's going to be much better for your overall athleticism and fitness. Let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this, because this really isn't even a major point of contention in nutritional science. It's not a major point of contention medically. It's generally accepted to be true. Now, when I say this, the caveat is, and the reason I pick on vegans, I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think the scientific literature suggests that it's necessary to cut out all animal products to have optimal health or optimal athleticism, right? And that's where I diverge with the vegans. They can dislike that all they want, but as long as they continue to push that point, I'm going to pick on them, that it's any reason to ever have to completely abstain 100% from a given food other than something like margarine or vegetable oils or things like that. Those things I would say it might be in your best interest to eat zero. Again, fried foods, probably in your best interest to eat zero. But it's their idea that you must abstain from these things completely. That's the only reason I pick on them. I understand their ethics, and I understand that their argument is one of ethics, and that there have been vegan speakers, very prominent vegan speakers, who have said that it's better, if given a choice, to tell a lie to save animals and to promote even false science if they had to, and lie about it would be the lesser of two evils. So that is the ideology you're dealing with. And I understand that point, where they're coming from. I get it. I understand they feel the way they do ethically. And they're right to feel that way ethically. We all have a right to believe what we want. My problem is when they try to push it on other people. That's the problem. They can argue about that all they want. That argument's not going to fly with me, not going to fly on my channel. Now, that being said, when it comes to the point about starch-based diets, they're right. They're absolutely right. And no reasonable person who has legitimately and unbiasedly looked at the scientific literature, the epidemiology, even the personal anecdote of physicians who have treated thousands of patients, you're generally going to find an overall consensus. And this is the problem that people run into. They see a few dissenting voices who disagree and think that that disrupts the consensus. Let me explain how this works. If 90% of scientists in a field generally agree on a topic, you pretty much have a decent, strong consensus. It's probably not reasonable for you as a layman to disagree with that consensus. Probably, the odds are you're probably going to get it wrong, just statistically speaking. There are exceptions, but the odds are not in your favor. This is one of those cases to where there's a strong consensus there. High starch diets, and that's the difference when we talk about carbohydrates. People throw out terms like carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates. Let's be honest here. We're talking starches. And that is what has been noted by a very well-known medical doctor and practitioner who is pretty much close to being vegan. He's not full vegan even by vegan standards, but he's pretty damn close. Dr. John McDougall always points that out. And if you watch any of his lectures and materials he puts out, that's what he calls it, a starch-based diet. Because we're not just saying all carbs, because when you say carbs and all, you get the keto advocates and all their craziness. Oh, you mean table sugar? It's like, no, we don't mean any of that. Starches. And I didn't say unrefined starches. I didn't make that statement. I said starches, because they're probably, from a health perspective and even a body composition perspective, there aren't any really bad starches. Maybe certain processes you put those foods through that add things to them might be bad, like you fry a potato in vegetable oil, okay. You slap butter all over it, okay, but the starch was never the problem. Maybe for someone who has celiacs, wheat's a problem because of the gluten in it, but the starches aren't the problem. You have a medical condition that affects less than 1% of the population that is very dangerous, that makes the protein in wheat a problem. It's the protein in there, not the starch, though. And that's kind of an exception, though. But again, you're talking about such a statistically small minority of people that it's not a major topic. And anyone who has self-diagnosed themselves with celiac disease is probably being a bit of a jackass. That's why you go to your medical doctor. You need to be diagnosed with that officially before you start cutting out entire healthy foods. But the point is a starch-based diet. Now you take someone like Dr. McDougall, look at his work. This is someone who has basically cured over 1,000 patients of their type 2 diabetes over the course of his career. He's worked with large numbers of patients, and he generally finds if he gets patients to follow his dietary recommendations, he cures their obesity and he cures their diabetes. What do we mean by cure? People who are on metformin or insulin can now come off of it and live a normal, healthy life. That's pretty much a cure for diabetes. It's not blocking the symptoms, it's a cure. You get their weight under control, you get their blood sugar under control, you take them off the drugs. When you no longer need drugs at all to regulate your blood sugar, your diabetes has been cured. Particularly if you can still eat carbs every day in significant quantities and not need insulin or metformin, you're cured. He has cured over 1,000 patients. It's got all documented. He's got it all documented. What does he do? Puts them on a very low-fat, starch-based diet. He has them eat starches for like 90% of their calories. What do we mean by starches? Carbs that aren't sugars. In other words, potatoes, beans, rice, grains of all types, barley, wheat, rice, oats, doesn't matter, all grains, vegetables, squash, broccoli, things like that. But yeah, he has them eat potatoes, rice, pasta, beans, vegetables all day long. All day long without adding any fats of any type to it. In other words, you don't get to add any butter, you don't add any oil, nothing. Almost no additional fat allowed in the diet, other than maybe what's in really lean cuts of meat. No nuts, no oils, nothing like that. No high-fat foods at all, and you're not allowed to add any fat of any type to the starches. And even has them moderate fruit to some extent. What happens? Most of them within a year come off of their diabetes meds. It's actually a cure, and it works. It works. Their cholesterol gets under control, their body weight gets under control, their diabetes gets under control. This is his cure, along with some doing basic exercise and physical activity. That's a cure for diabetes. He's cured it. Hundreds of other doctors have too. This is something he's worked with a lot and realizes it works. Starches are the natural food of Homo sapien. All right, that is our food. We handle it very, very well. We handle it efficiency with almost zero toxicity in the body, with very, very, almost nothing in the way of negative effects. And in fact, like I've said, people are like, but that's carbs. It requires insulin. It does. But it's a low enough insulin load that if you do it right, it shifts your insulin sensitivity and it cures diabetes. Now, that being said, you have all these doctors who've done this stuff and cured people's diabetes with this sort of diet. That should tell you something. You take countries around the world, cultures around the world, look at their average life expectancy. There's a correlation between life expectancy and what percentage of your calories come from starch. Usually countries that have the highest starch content in their calories, the highest amount of starch making up their calories, have the longest life expectancies, they have the lowest rates of diabetes, they have the lowest rates of cardiovascular disease. We can talk all we want about cancer. Cancer is a problem. What's the number one killer in the U.S.? Heart disease. Cardiovascular disease is hands down the number one cause of death in the United States. It is the number one. And people say, really, it's not murder and gun violence? No. Gun violence is less than 10%. And that includes suicides, which is most gun violence. In other words, heart attacks kill 10 to 20 times as many people every single day in this country than all weapons do combined. All weapons. Murder is barely on the charts. And we have a serious murder rate. Put that in perspective. What is most likely to kill you in the United States is cardiovascular disease of some type. Cardiovascular disease, that's what kills you. High starch diets, cultures that follow, in countries and nations that follow really, really, really high starch diets have almost zero cardiovascular disease. The people who die of heart attacks are dying in their 80s of heart attacks, not their 50s, not their 60s. Obesity is almost non-existent. In other words, people who eat the most starch tend to have the lowest body fat, lowest heart attacks, lowest diabetes rates. Most of the top athletes around the world, go look at anyone who's placing in the top half of the field in the Olympics, and almost every single sport, almost all of them are on starch-based diets. Are there exceptions? Sure. They're a tiny minority. At least 90% of your elite athletes in every single sport in the world consume starch-based diets, with only, again, a tiny number of less than 1 in 10 are an exception to the rule. Again, this should tell you something. So in other words, when vegans say stuff like this, actually starch-based diets really are superior. They are. The overwhelming amount of scientific literature, direct studies, epidemiology all confirm that. Same thing, you take sports nutritionists who have to work with the top athletes around the world, the overwhelming majority of them find that most athletes will perform at their highest possible levels when running starch-based diets. There are exceptions to which certain athletes will benefit from something different in the right context, but again, it's a minority. So when vegans make this statement, they're correct. And anyone who is arguing with this statement probably has a book to sell or a product to sell you. In other words, they're not doing it because of their own, your best interest. They're doing it to sell you something. They're doing it to sell you something. And if you're making this claim and you're not selling a product, I don't know what in the hell you're doing with your life. All you're doing is harming yourself because it's not based on reality. So anyone who's promoting this and they're not making money off promoting something different, what in the hell are you doing? Are you stupid? Are you trying to kill yourself and other people? At least make money if you're going to do it. I mean, if you're not selling a book or selling a product to make money, why in the hell would you kill yourself and other people? Like, why would you do that? I mean, I understand the concept of financial motivation. I get that. But if you're not going to make money, why would you do something that stupid? Doesn't make any sense. So yeah, vegans are right on this one, and I'm going to give them the nod on that. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.